Hello students, we are going to continue in on our Chapter 7, Lesson 3 notes, A New Plan of Government. And we are beginning at the title Debate and Adoption, and then more specifically under Federalists and Anti-Federalists. So we're looking for definitions to start off with who were the Federalists, who were the Anti-Federalists. So I will begin reading. Before the Constitution could go into effect, 9 states had to ratify or approve it. Americans debated the arguments for and against the Constitution in newspapers, at meetings, and in everyday conversations. Federalists and Anti-Federalists. People who supported the new Constitution were called Federalists. They took this name to stress that the Constitution would create a system of federalism, a government in which power is divided between the national government and the states. Among them were George Washington and Benjamin Franklin. James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and John Jay wrote a series of essays explaining and defending the Constitution. Called the Federalist Papers, these essays were later published in newspapers and sent to delegates at state conventions. They made a powerful argument in favor of ratification. Okay, so we're going to pause there and just go ahead and answer the first one. Now, this is technically a vocabulary term, but they don't have it highlighted in the text. But it's right here in the first sentence. People who support the Constitution. So supporters of the Constitution are Federalists. And so then we're going to read on to find Anti-Federalists, which hopefully you can kind of guess what that is. Those who opposed the Constitution were called Anti-Federalists. They wrote their own essays, which later came to be known as the Anti-Federalist Papers. The Anti-Federalists argued that a strong national government would take away liberties Americans had fought for in the American Revolution. They warned that the government would ignore the will of the states and favor the wealthy few over the common people. Anti-Federalists favored local government that was controlled more closely by the people. So once again, in the very first sentence, those who oppose the Constitution. So the question here that we really want to focus on is, why would someone oppose the Constitution? What could be wrong with putting a plan of government into place? And so as you heard in those paragraphs, both sides spent time really trying to prove their point and wrote a series of essays on each one and trying to sway people in one direction or the other. So we have the Federalist Papers for people who supported the Constitution, and then we had the Anti-Federalist Papers for those who did not support the Constitution or who opposed the Constitution. And in the Anti-Federalist Papers, they argued that a strong national government would take away freedoms that the Americans fought for in the American Revolution. Remember, they are afraid that states are not going to have individual powers, that they're not going to be able to make decisions within their own states. They are afraid that a national government will tell them every single thing that they need to do, like under Great Britain. And they were also afraid that the government would ignore the states. And once again, NATL, GOVT is national government. And then down here, GOVT is government. So our next title here is a Bill of Rights. So we've talked a little bit about a Bill of Rights before, that some states had Bill of Rights. They decided not to include a Bill of Rights in the original U.S. Constitution because they thought that powers were defined enough. However, we're going to come back to this again because there were still some states that were not happy with the fact that there was no Constitution. So I'm going to go ahead and preview the question, read the paragraph, and then I will switch the page in case you're still typing. So what was the strongest criticism of the Constitution? The strongest criticism of the Constitution may have been that it lacked a Bill of Rights to protect individual freedoms. Several state conventions announced that they would not ratify it unless a Bill of Rights was included. George Mason expressed the problem. There is not a Declaration of Rights, and the laws of the general government being paramount to the laws and constitutions of the several states. The declarations of rights in the separate states are no security. So this is what we're looking for in the first sentence. The strongest criticism is that it lacked a Bill of Rights, so that it did not have a Bill of Rights. So we're going to move forward to ratifying the Constitution. And remember that ratify means to approve, okay? And so number one, what state was the first to approve the Constitution or to ratify the Constitution? This was also in the assignment that I gave you that had the short passage to read with 3 multiple choice questions, but we're going to answer it again here. On December 7th, 1787, Delaware became the first state to approve the Constitution. By June 21st, 1788, the 9th state, New Hampshire, ratified it. In theory, this made the Constitution law. However, without the support of the largest states, New York and Virginia, the new government could not succeed. So we're going to go ahead and answer that. The first state was Delaware. Delaware was the first state. And that's actually Delaware's state motto, or state nickname, actually. It's their state nickname. Every state has a nickname, and that's Delaware's, the first state. So then number 2, what made Virginia decide to ratify? Because at the end of that last paragraph, New York and Virginia had not yet ratified. So in Virginia, Patrick Henry claimed the Constitution did not place enough limits on government power. Still, Virginia did ratify the document after promises that there would be a Bill of Rights amendment, something added to the document. This promise was met in 1791. In July 1788, New York ratified the Constitution, followed by North Carolina in November 1789 and Rhode Island in May 1790. So Virginia decided that they would ratify. Here it says Virginia did ratify after they promised that they would add a Bill of Rights. And remember, BOR is Bill of Rights. So once Virginia ratified, then the rest of the states also ratified. And by 1790, all of them had actually signed it. So before, back in 1787, when we said that the Constitution went into effect, we didn't have the approval of all the states, but we had enough to approve it. Now, in 1790, all the states are going to approve it. And then our next question is to define amendment. Now, amendment, a change, correction, or improvement added to a document is what it says here. We're going to focus on that first part, that this is a change. And in general, we like to believe that it's a correction or it's an improvement, but just because something changes doesn't always mean that it is a better change, okay? So as long as there's a change that's made, it's called an amendment. So number 4, when was the Bill of Rights added to the Constitution? And we're gonna see that here. This promise was met in 1791. So the first 10 amendments are about individual rights of the citizens. And they were all added at once. And then when we move into amendments after the first 10, they were all added at different times separately, but numbers 1 through 10 were all added in at the same time in 1791. So you're also going to need to know that the Bill of Rights has 10 amendments in them, okay? So this takes us to the end of our lesson 3 information.